Janice Rivera, welcome to Lingofest.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for making the time. I'm always eager to talk to folks who are outside of my bubble, and my bubble being, conversational voice technology. And so if I just stay in the bubble, we keep talking about the same things over and over again.
Right.
And so to do innovative things, one has to go out of their bubble. So I always like to start whenever I can, when I talk to someone, by looking at what they volunteer for, because it tells me quite a bit about the person, their values, and their passions. And you are a volunteer in a couple of things. The one I want to start with is the one where you're in theater. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that is probably my number one volunteer activity, and it is also probably my number one passion. So I started in theater when I was very young in grade school, just doing the school play type of thing. And it became a part of my life all throughout school and in college. And I even wanted to major in theater when I was in school. My parents weren't so thrilled with that idea. So I tried to find another more scholastic type of pursuit. And that turned out to be video and film, which is similar to theater in that it's all storytelling, right? But so I did continue that for my education and then my career. But theater has always been a little, something on my shoulder. And so I continue to be involved in community theater in various places that I've lived, in Alexandria and then in Washington, D.C. I think wherever I would go, I would have to make sure there's a good community theater nearby. And this area is very rich with community theater, a very high level of community theater. So I just, as an actress and singer, have pursued that, and it's been very fulfilling. I've met so many amazing people. Theater is this wonderful melting pot for people. You get all walks of life: lawyers, school teachers, just everyone who has that same kind of little passion that I do to want to be on stage or be a part of, the whole process of putting up a show. So I've always been involved as a performer. And I guess about 10 or 15 years ago or so, one of the theaters I'm involved in found out that I did video and film work. And they said, hey, how would you feel like helping us out with some sound? Just running the soundboard, during the show. And I said, sure, I can do that. And then they were looking for people to do a little bit more than that in terms of designing the sound for the show. So I started dipping my toe into that. And it was surprisingly very fulfilling for me, because not only was it taking my skills as an editor and audiovisual type of person, but I also, could see it from the other perspective, from being a performer. And so that felt very enriching to me, to be able to do it on stage and then also behind the scenes. So I felt like I brought a special kind of skill set to that. So since then, I've just alternated my time in my theater works between being on stage and then sometimes behind the scenes as the sound designer. And it's very fulfilling. It is all volunteer. I don't know, how many people realize that when you go to see a community theater show, there are very few people that are involved with that production that are paid. Maybe the director gets a stipend. Maybe if there's a band, they would get a stipend, but everyone else is putting in that time, 100% volunteer. And it is a lot of time. If you're performing, you're there, sometimes 4 or 5 nights a week, 3 hours at a time. It's like a part-time job for about 3 to 4 months. So I choose very wisely now what shows I want to get involved in, because it does take up so much of that time. And I do it because I do want to serve the arts community, but I also do it because it is my passion and I love it. So it's a win-win.
No, that's usually the case with passions, right? That's why they're called passions. And so, what does audio? Let's say the audio aspect of your work. What kind of problems are you solving for them? With just things sounding good, or
so it goes much deeper than that. So most people, when they go to see a show, if there are microphones involved, especially in musicals, when there's amplification of the music and then the performers on stage, they think of the microphones and they think of that as the sound design, the audio contribution. It's actually much, much more than that, especially if it's a play. If it is a play, you don't have a band, you don't have musical transitions. The sound designer has to come up with all the creative that's going on that is auditory. So there might be some scripted, there might be, a telephone rings here or a doorbell rings there. So you have to find those sound effects that go with that. But I've also kind of delved into more of adding like ambiance. So if the scene is in New York City, I might put speakers behind the doors or behind the windows that are, street sounds from the city. Then I also like to do what is underscoring. Basically, for films have been done for years and years, right? You put music into scenes to help enhance the emotional content or levity or whatever it is. So I have kind of delved into that, and that's become a little bit of my specialty, that I will go to a lot of rehearsals and I'll watch the scenes, I'll time them, and I will go and then sometimes record the rehearsals. So I bring back the video to my little studio, and then I'll match up musical pieces to it to kind of see, wow, could this help enrich this little storytelling? I don't want to take away from it, I don't want to detract from it, but just to help give it a little bit more of a oomph to tell that story. So that is, when you're doing a play, you have a lot more creativity with that, because you don't have a song coming up every 5 minutes like in a musical. So a lot of it is very nuanced with, sound effects. I'll think about every time the door opens, can you hear crickets outside? Every time someone opens a window, is there something going on there? To give it a little dimension. And at first, when I work with a director, sometimes I'll tell them these things and they're like, wow, I've never really thought about that. But when you see it on stage, it's very subtle. It's very subconscious to the person in the audience. But that's, to me, what enriches the performance. So it's a lot more than just making sure microphones work and, speakers work, which I do have to know how to do that. You also have to program all those sounds into, the computer program that runs it. So that's another thing too, putting in, okay, I want this sound effect to then fade, or I want it to, dissolve into another sound effect. So all of that is computer programming basically, but you have to come up with the sounds and design them and edit them to fit the piece that you want.
Wow. So there's a lot of creativity there. Right?
Very much so. And that's what really got me hooked on doing sound design, is because there is a lot of creativity if you choose to explore it that way. I mean, a lot of sound designers will look at the script and go, okay, yeah, I'll give you the doorbells and the all that stuff. But if you're working with a director that's willing to kind of explore a little more dimension, it can be very creative.
Yeah. And I guess, like you said, probably it's most effective when the audience doesn't even notice it, meaning it just feels natural. Of course, when you open a door, when they won't even notice it, right?
I know. Yeah.
That's usually the sign of excellence, is when it's just there. And and if it were not there, it would be a different feeling, I would say, right?
Right.
Wow. Okay. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Of course, we take so many things for granted when we go and watch a show or whatever. We just think that things happen by themselves. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
What is it? 4 nights a week, 3 hours. Jeez, that's a lot. For 3 months, 2-3 months, that's usually the length of a production.
Right. So now, as the sound designer, that is not the time commitment that usually is involved. You're not into all those rehearsals. I might go to 3 or 4 rehearsals toward the end of the rehearsal
But if you're
process.
performing, let's say
If you're
you have a
performing, it
role.
is definitely, you know, a
Yeah.
3 to 4
And you do
months.
that as well?
Oh yeah, yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm a singer actress, and so I do a lot of musicals, and those are particularly time consuming because not only do you have a play that you're telling, but you have to learn all the music as well. So you have music rehearsals, you have acting rehearsals, blocking rehearsals, and then sometimes dance rehearsals, which, you know, I have to do as well. So yeah, it's a big time commitment. So I choose my shows very carefully.
What's the biggest role you had?
Oh boy, let's see. So when I was in school, I played Maria in West Side Story. I always wanted to play Anita though, but I never got the chance. And probably the most interesting role that I played, and one that was really my heart, was I played Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh.
Now you're thinking, how'd that work out? You're a woman and you played a male part. Well, they did it in DC at a little community theater, and the producers and directors wanted to do a modern interpretation. And so it was modern time. And of course, so then, you know, Judas could be a woman or a man. And so I grew up listening to that album when I was a kid over and over and over again. I always loved the part of Judas. And of course, I thought I'm never going to be able to play that. But when I heard that these auditions were open, the genders were open for the characters, I jumped into that. And so I got the part, and it was just one of the most phenomenal roles because it was just beyond a dream that I could do that. And I kind of have a edgy rock voice. So it's a rock opera. And so that was a lot of fun.
Wow. Wow. And do these theaters record these performances?
So most of them do not, because of the rights that are involved. So when you buy the rights to do a show, they're very stringent about not recording them. Certainly not for then, broadcasting it. Now, some theaters will record it for rehearsal purposes and archival purposes. So I do have a few recordings that of my performances, but I could not put them on.
You couldn't put them. Yeah. And so, I guess if somebody, let's say a talent, right, who wants they're just starting their career and they want to to be noticed and found out and so forth, how would they do that? Would they proactively send out snippets of their roles, or maybe how would somebody who is doing this, who is performing, how would they leverage their work?
So a lot of actors get agents or become part of agencies. There are also many sites that you can, I know there's certainly for voiceover work and for acting work, that you can put together a resume reel, little clips of your performances. And you can post those onto a site. So either people that are looking for actors can go there. Otherwise, it's a lot of auditioning.
Right?
Yeah, you go to auditions. And of course, during the Zoom years, a lot wasn't happening. But one thing that did sort of emerge was auditioning through Zoom. And so that seems to be kind of still happening in some theater groups. But they, instead of having these big auditions where, dozens of people show up and hang out in a room, and then one at a time you come in and you do they'll request for a Zoom audition. Yes. So, which takes a lot of the edge off of the actor.
Yeah.
Because then you can wait till you record the right one, and then he's
right.
But instead of tripping on your words during the audition. But it's mostly you do go to auditions, particularly for theater. That's so someone who's really serious is going to go to New York or go to LA, and they're going to really pound the pavement on finding the auditions. And usually having an agent will help that, because they'll say, oh, here's some auditions going on for a role that you'd be good for, and they try to hook you up that way. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Are New York and LA still the hubs? Are there new hubs that are emerging?
You know, I think most big cities certainly have. I mean,
Most big
Chicago
cities.
is, um, uh, can't think of,
San Francisco
oh,
and
sure. I mean,
Seattle.
anywhere that there's a, good populace that it's mined on the arts, you're going to have a good
Yeah.
place for theater. New York obviously is the big one, but it's not the only one.
Right, right.
For sure.
Well, let me ask you this, since we are talking about theater. So you're in audio, you're in voice, and theater. Um, I'm starting to see emerging something akin to old radio theater, right? Which is, I'm talking about, right? Have you watched Woody Allen's Radio Days, where it's all about, the days of when radio was
Sure.
king, right?
Sure. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about, is this something that's coming? Is this something that's becoming real?
So during COVID, when theaters were shut down and there was so so much darkness in the arts, I think it became a little something more that people were exploring, to do more audio.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we discussed earlier when we chatted that I became a part of an audio theater podcast,
Mm-hmm.
which was called Between Acts, and that was produced by Missing Link. And that basically was a COVID baby. Because we thought, how can we kind of give people this theatrical experience, but without having to have people get together in person. And it was a really interesting process of, auditioning online, like we were talking about. People would send me their audio tapes. We got these original scripts, and people, the authors were willing to give us their scripts to work with, so that they would have, something produced during this time. And so it was taking the idea of the radio theater of days of old,
Mm-hmm.
using new technology, using, fresher approach, and my approach of, trying to create like a soundscape along with the presentation of the story, which really I thought just could open up so much. I mean, it did for me creatively. It's like, you're adding music, you're adding sound effects, you've got the actors, the pacing and the timing, kind of, of someone just even with their eyes closed, being able to just, it's like reading a book, only it's like an audio book, only you have all the sound effects and bells and whistles to go with it. So people just really seem to love that. We got a lot of really great feedback and response. Now that things are opening up a little bit more, I'm not sure. People just are so desperate to get into a theater. They want to do that. But I think that because podcasting and audio still is very, very appealing to a lot of people, I think people, are ready to depart from the visual stimulus all the time. Even it's something you can do so much when you're walking, when you're gardening, you can have something, going on and entertaining in your ears. So I personally, I think it's a really wonderful opportunity, and I hope to see it grow and catch on.
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, my son, who is 20, so he's, what do you call that? Digital kid. Grew up with smartphones, right? Doesn't understand how the world could have, operated without. Well, I wonder too sometimes, like, how did we live without these things, right? But in any case, even he, I mean, when he was like 8, 9, he bumped into, I don't know, one of the Get Smart or one of those old radio shows, and it was being aired on NPR radio. I think every Sunday night, every evening from 7 to 10 or something like that, 3 hours, right? And he loved it.
Yes.
I was always he loved to listen to it, and he every Sunday night he would sleep listening to that.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. Oh my gosh, he's a kindred soul, because I did that too when I was a kid. There was this old it was an old radio show. I can't remember the name of it, but it came on a certain time, and it was like a mystery thing. It was like a mystery theater kind of thing. And I was fascinated by it, just
Yeah,
fascinated by it. And the same thing, I could putter around my room while I was
right,
listening to it. I didn't have to sit in front of,
right.
something. And I just, it is, there's something very soothing and comforting about,
Yeah,
a good story being told,
yeah,
just auditorily. So
yeah,
good for him.
yeah. I think I think it's an interesting because there's this thing called augmented reality. So there's virtual reality, and there's real reality, so to speak. And there's this thing called augmented reality. So, for example, if you wear glasses, it might show you, glasses. It might give you information about your environment, right? So it's not distorting environment; it's just augmenting things about your environment, right? And I've always thought that audio radio is a version of augmented reality because it creates an atmosphere around you without taking you away from your reality, right?
Right,
Like a
right.
movie when you're watching, you're just completely absorbed. You don't, you're not aware of your environment if it's a good movie and all, right? But if it is radio, I think you're living your life. You're packing or you're folding clothes or whatever you're doing. So
Yeah.
you're in a world, but there's this layer or this ambiance or there's this thing that augments your being, right? So you are
Yes,
in your world plus, it feels like. Um,
definitely, definitely. It's a very powerful sense.
right? Yeah.
Hearing is a very powerful sense. I think we take it for granted very much. We think the visual is so strong, but um, it it allows you to come up with the visual,
That's
and
right. Yeah.
very much
Mhm.
like reading does, only even more so because it's just a little richer than your own imagination can be, but or it augments what your own imagination can be. So yeah, no, I think it's a very powerful. And a lot of it subconscious, like I was saying, when I work on these shows, I try to come up with things that are just something that we're not aware of, but in it are part of our environment, enrich our environment, and can be soothing, can be disturbing, you know so many levels of experience with audio.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I don't know how many times this has happened to you, but you're listening to a really good story on NPR, and then you don't want to leave the car. You want to listen
Right.
to the whole
Oh
story,
yeah.
right?
You park and you're like still there. Oh no, 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 it's not over yet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it can draw you, and
For sure.
also emotion can be expressed very effectively, like with just pauses, and the voice changes a little bit, and sort of exactly what they feel, the person. So it's interesting how this medium, which is in a way, people, if they want to think about it simplistically, you know, um, audio or audio is like video minus the visual, but it's not really, right? It is a thing in its own right.
Couldn't agree
Meaning, if
more.
there was the video, they would probably distract. You wouldn't pay attention to. So, for example, once in a while, I don't know why I do it. I have some favorite movies, and I listen to the movie. I don't watch the movie. Like once in a while, I do that, right? And the thing is, I catch myself discovering some things that were said that I didn't catch when I was
Mm.
watching, even though I've watched that movie many, many times. Some expressions, some intonation that because I'm not looking at anything, I pick up and I pay attention to and say, "Oh, I didn't realize he said that. Wow, I watched this movie 25 times and there's something to discover." So it just tells me that there's something interesting going on there about, you know,
Oh, absolutely. Again, when you're deprived of one sense, the other sense kind of tunes in even more. So,
and hearing some kind of a noise that you didn't notice at all.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so when somebody says, okay, um, people who are blind are sort of deprived, I say yes, but at the same time, they have something that we don't have. They're probably hearing a lot more
Oh,
nuances and stuff that
definitely.
we are not picking up. Um,
Right. And they have to, like you said, language, speech, sure, it's conveying communication just in its inherent form, but there's so many layers of emotion and context in how you say something. Like you said, the pauses or the inflection. When you're just listening, you hone in on those things. And conversely, I think that we get into trouble with texts and emails when you don't have that, when you don't have the inflection. Oh my God, I can't even tell you, with even just my friends, like, well, why would you say that? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And like, well, it sounds like, you're angry about that. Or I said, no, not at all. I was just kind of being sarcastic or joking or whatever.
Oh, it's hard.
You don't have that, the vocal intonation to go along with that. It can get you in trouble.
Thank God for the emojis.
That's right. See, I was joking because I put a laughing emoji next to
you
that.
You gotta put in those emojis, and I mean, the thing is, I use like 2 or 3 emojis, and my son laughs at me because, like, I'm like,
do you on the emojis, or do you use the same ones over and over again?
No, I just use a smile one, and I don't know, 2 or 3. But they, this generation, they have a whole spectrum of them. That, like, for example, I learned that if you put a period at the end of your text, when you send a text, that means you're angry.
What? Yeah. I thought it just meant you understood punctuation.
No, apparently it has meaning. I'm not judging, I'm just saying that that's a signal, right? Because nobody would take the time to put a period, apparently, unless they want to. And if they want to, they mean to. And like, period. Right. And I remember once.
Oh my gosh. Now I got to look at what I'm.
Oh, yeah.
My punctuation.
I was picking up my son once, I don't know, a few years ago when he started dating, and so he wasn't driving. He was still, 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I sent him a text. So I said, "Are you ready?" Period. And so he and his girlfriend freaked out. They said, "Is your dad angry? What is he angry about?" I said, and so when I picked him up, he said, like, "Oh, are you angry?" I said, "Why?" "Well, you put that period there, so."
I can't believe that. That's a new one for me.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, well, that's probably just the tip of the iceberg of things in that world.
My daughter has enlightened me about many things, but she hasn't told me that one. She's 23 now, so maybe it's not a thing.
Well, I mean, she's just, she probably like, let me not bother her with yet another thing.
Oh, Mom, she doesn't know.
Wonderful. So usually I start with the passions because they tell me things about, the folks I speak with, but they also enable me to ask the following question, which is how does that passion or the things that you do on your volunteer work, how has that helped you in your job, in the job where you do things to make a living and your career, so to speak? Because it feels like you're one of those where they dovetail, right?
Your job, there's melding there.
It's not completely separate, like a lawyer who's doing, that's a different thing. Maybe not. I mean, a lawyer who's an actor, maybe they can.
Those are fun. They're like, wow, okay, they're really although we have also concluded that lawyers, especially trial lawyers, they have to be actors.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, right?
So the ones that are trial lawyers, we totally get it. We're like, okay, you're on stage all the time. But so I guess the reason my passion and my volunteer pursuits very much dovetail with my career are that because I chose a career that I'm also passionate about.
Yeah.
So it's very creative. So I'm, video post-production, I do video editing, audio editing. And so the bottom line is storytelling for me. And I'm very passionate about that. So even if it's, a training video that I'm doing for, some organization, corporate group, I try to bring elements in it that are going to be engaging and, whether it's adding music to it or, some fun graphics that are just going to kind of engage the viewer a little bit more than just a dry kind of a story. I went into film and video actually thinking that I was going to be on camera. When I was in school, I very much thought I was going to be anchor person or something like that in the news. And when I did an internship in college, I quickly found out that no, that was not where I wanted to be. I didn't like being in front of the camera. It was very different than being on stage. On stage, I can be in front of thousands of people and I'm very comfortable. But that lens in front of me just left me cold. And I just realized that that was not what I wanted.
Did you feel it was boxing you into one specific persona that you had to do over and over again? Or what was the thing that was not attractive?
I think the thing is that with theater, I felt connected with people. And with a camera, I wasn't able to feel that connection. It just felt very cold and impersonal, even though I knew that, it was going to be out there and people would see. So I very quickly kind of regrouped and did another internship that was for a different group that was producing, internal videos for their group. And I was able to, do interviews and then edit them and, kind of put the whole piece together. And I thought, oh, this is great, because you have a lot of power with that, a lot of power with any interviews. You can take the little snippets that you want. As we know, you can take things out, a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
But I thought, oh, documentary, that's kind of more where I think I need to go, not in front of the camera. I need to be behind and creating the story. So quickly got into that. And then after college, I, pursued more production stuff that was along I did a lot of production work when I first started, because I kind of did everything. So I would be location scout, I would be script continuity person, general on hands learning. And it was great because I learned a lot about production, how it all happens, what a shoot is like and how long it takes. And but then what I really loved was working on the post, when all the footage would come in, and sometimes you'd have a script for it, sometimes you wouldn't. And back in those days, showing my age, it was not uncommon for women to go into post-production. It was tough for women to get into production. Some of it was physical. You had to carry a lot of gear around, but mostly it was just still very much a man's world in production. Now,
what does production mean? Meaning,
so production means you're shooting. You're shooting all the, and everything that goes along with that. Planning the shoot, coordinating all of the logistics, everything, and then the actual shoot days. You're shooting a scene here, you're shooting a scene there, you're going, sometimes all over the place. Sometimes you're in a studio, sometimes you're out in the field. So we did a lot of that for a few years, and I really was able to see the whole picture of what producing a video looks like and what it is. So those are very valuable tools. But then I just started getting into post-production, and it was a more friendly place for a woman to get into in terms of just the environment. And then I very quickly, realized that was something that not only did I enjoy and love, but I was good at.
Yeah. So